It's, I got to thank Councilwoman Kanish and certainly on behalf of Mayor Michael B. Hancock, thanks for having me here this afternoon. One of the things I'm going to share a couple things about me personally that I think you may or may not have any interest in. I've been with the city not quite 5 months, but I am a Denver native. I remember we used to call this the east side. We used to call the north side the west side, not highlands, lowlands, and so on. I've been around a while. My hair was dark, as my friend Carolyn Love said back then, too, so I've been around for a while. This is a real opportunity for me. I'm not a political appointee. I had no interest in doing that. I had some other opportunities to be a White House appointee, and I turned that down to stay here to serve my city. As I told the mayor when we talked about it, I said, well, Mr. Mayor, you know, when the president calls, you go. When the mayor calls, you stay. And I decided to stay because this is our city. And I really, you know, one of the things when I talk to them, really, you know, those of us that have been around here for a bit, we don't want this to turn into, and it's nothing on Manhattan, but we don't want this to turn into another Manhattan. I mean, this is our city. We want to keep it affordable. So I'm a true believer in that. And I come from a large financial institution the last 10 years where they kind of referred to some of us as the true believers that really believe in what we're doing in keeping housing affordable across the country. And as a part of that, very fortunate to have political leadership and the political will that are behind it. It's not often that housing has become a policy issue at a local level, a state level, and a national level, and it is. Denver's the 6th fastest growing city in the country. 2,500 millennials a month are moving in here. We've talked about the need. It's just tremendous. 27,000 households are rent burdened, meaning they're paying more than 30% of their income towards their rent or their housing costs. And it's just going to get worse, in my opinion. So we're very, very fortunate to have the political will around that. Population continues to grow. The housing market hasn't kept up. Population has spiked. We have 100,000 more people here in the city and county of Denver since 2000. We have another projected 100,000 over the next decade. This is a real opportunity for us. Mayor Hancock has done a lot since he's been in office. Again, I've only been with the city a little less than 5 months, but his 3x5 initiative, 3,000 units over the next 5 years. The first year, the Office of Economic Development and this housing department, in partnership with our friends around the table, we couldn't, because we're not the developers, these folks are. They turn the shovels, they get it done. We provide a little bit of gap financing, just a little bit, as Kate articulated, to try to help close that gap. But it's over 730 units in the first year. We're well on track to continue going forward with that. You know, I do want to touch base a bit on the declining federal resources. We've had, over the last 5 years, 35% decline in federal resources in the city and county of Denver. That's huge. The need continues to go up. Robin talked a bit about, all of our friends, they talked about the need to create a sustainable funding source. There's a lot of effort behind that on both sides of the aisle, and from the nonprofit community, the residents, the development community, both for and nonprofit, and others. I can tell you within the city, we're clearly looking at what our options are and best practices across the country. By way of example, and this is kind of a two-edged sword for us as a city, I was asked to join by Enterprise Community Partners a group called the High Cost Cities Forum. It's housing directors of high-cost cities across the country. There are 9 cities in there. We are the 9th city to be invited. New York, San Francisco, Boston, Washington, D.C., San Francisco. One side of the sword, it's nice because the peer group, I met with them for the first time last week, just tremendous folks, tremendous ideas around resources, and you know, they've been addressing these issues, I think, a bit longer than us. The other side of it is, we're there. I mean, that's just, we're there. We're a high-cost city across the country now. So what do we do as a community? Mayor Hancock launched a 3x5, Housing Denver, on October 5th. The mayor announced his 5-year housing strategy called Housing Denver. I have a PowerPoint, but I still am not using that. So what I would ask is our folks from the commission, I know you're taking notes here, if you have a summary of what we can do relative to our housing plan, please send that to me. We are actively seeking, not just input, but I'm actually putting together annual action plans with metrics behind that and looking for external partners to help us in a lot of those areas. So we welcome that feedback, and I do have some business cards. Housing Denver is really going to guide the policy and the resource allocation out of our department. And it's a small department relative to need. And I'm not talking staffing. I'm talking about just resources, of declining federal resources. Fortunately, I can't give you the exact amount because we're meeting next week. Robin talked about the revolving loan fund, the money out of the general fund, $6 million. From the IHO fund, we're putting $2 million into that. Just today negotiated with the state, we have to go in front of the State Housing Board to get an additional infusion of dollars into that. And that's for workforce rental and the 4% deals that Gate had talked about. It's the gap financing that we want to see what we can inject in there to make those deals happen, to create more affordable workforce housing. Inclusionary housing ordinance. In the midst of rewriting the rules and regulations happen, I think I'll be glad when it's done. Just sitting down locked in a room with city attorneys for hours at a time going word by word, but it's really going to be important in terms of the creation of affordable housing going forward for this city. So I welcome Councilwoman Kanish's leadership on that. The Metro Mortgage Assistance Plus program. And the mayor's going to be hosting a regional housing summit for policymakers, leadership from the nonprofit, the foundation, the business community to look at. We talked about housing in Denver is a regional issue. It impacts, again, a Denver guy that's been around my entire life, it impacts, Thornton may not think they have an affordable housing problem. North Bend, those old first-tier jurisdictions, that's where the affordable housing is at. It's getting so expensive in a high-cost market like Denver. Where do you go? People have to go out to those 1960s Pro-Mac homes that 800 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, that need rehab. That's where they're going. So the mayor's going to host this regional summits so we can start to elevate these issues, really understand it's not only Denver's issue, it's a regional issue, it's a statewide issue. So I have the housing plan can be found at denvergov.org/housing. You can find that. I'm not going to do a deep dive into it. It takes a PowerPoint some time to kind of walk through that. What I will offer to you, though, as going forward after I put together my action plan, which I can show you, I am actively working on it. 1 page, 2 page, 3 pages. And these are all the metrics, everything behind that, what we're going to get done over the next 5 years. And as I've told City Council and other groups I've spoke to, hold me accountable. If I'm on plan, below plan, above plan, that's my job. I'm not a politician, I'm not an appointee. We've got some serious issues to address in our city. So with that, I'll just turn it over to you all, because I know you're going to have some questions. Corey, thank you.
Hi, my name is Corey Johnson. I am an administrator with Denver Department of Human Services. And part of my job is that for the last 15 years out of my 20-some years that I've been working with children, I also have a specific interest in how the disparate treatment of families affects children. And that starts at home, and that begins with the housing. And that is one of the things that I've been interested in. One of the reports we looked at, I'm also a member of the African American Commission, and one of the reports we looked at was this Access Denied, a report on rental housing discrimination in Denver metro area, done by the Denver Metro Housing Center. And what happened is, this was a controlled study. I want to talk about the human side of it. This was a controlled study in which they had paired matches of black and white, Latino, white, and people with families, people without, that went into the same rental market. And what they discovered is that 67% of the time African Americans experience discrimination in housing, and 91% of the time Latinos experience discrimination. This discrimination manifested itself in they received less info. They were shown fewer units within buildings. They were given no specials, no move-in specials, those types of things. They were given higher prices than their white counterparts for the same units. And also, when they took families there, 73% of the time, people with families were discriminated against based on the fact they were given discouraging statements like, it's really not conducive to children, those types of things. I'll tell you from a human standpoint, from where I work in human services, I know in the last 20-some years I've been in hundreds if not thousands of homes. So I've been all over the city. And some of the challenges have been talked about this before. But many people who come through our doors, we receive over 10,000 referrals a year regarding child abuse and neglect. Most of those are around services, lack of resources, and just poverty. A lot of those things are related around where people live and what resources are available to them. Transportation is a huge issue and always has been, because one of the biggest things that in a